The desire to be noticed is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. Everyone wants to feel that they matter, that their presence has significance, and that other people recognize something valuable in them. There is nothing wrong with wanting recognition. The problem begins when recognition becomes the goal itself. When you constantly try to make people notice you, your behavior becomes centered around their reactions instead of your own development. You begin asking who is watching, who is responding, who is impressed, and who is giving you approval. Without realizing it, you become a performer in your own life. The better question is not, how do I make people notice me? It is, what can I build within myself that naturally deserves attention? That question changes everything. A person who is constantly demanding attention can become predictable. They speak louder when nobody listens. They repeatedly explain themselves. They seek compliments. They display every achievement. They want immediate reactions to everything they do. Their attention is always directed outward, searching for confirmation. But a person who is developing genuine value behaves differently. They are learning, they are practicing, they are building, they are observing, they are improving. They may still enjoy recognition, but they do not depend on it. This creates a different kind of presence because people can sense when someone has direction. You do not need to announce that you are ambitious when your actions demonstrate that you have goals. You do not need to constantly tell people that you are confident when you are comfortable making decisions without asking everyone for approval. Value is demonstrated more powerfully than it is announced. Think about the difference between someone who constantly talks becoming successful and someone who quietly develops the skills required to succeed. One spends energy describing the future, the other spends energy constructing it. Over time, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. This principle applies to almost every area of life. If you want to become more interesting, become genuinely interested in the world, learn about subjects that challenge you, read, ask questions, develop skills, explore ideas, become curious. If you want to become more confident, do difficult things that teach you that you can handle difficulty. If you want to become respected, become dependable. If you want stronger relationships, learn how to listen, communicate honestly, and respect boundaries. If you want a powerful presence, learn to control your reactions instead of allowing every external event to control your mood. The goal is not to create an image. The goal is to create substance. An image can attract attention temporarily. Substance gives people a reason to remember you. This is why chasing popularity can become such a trap. Attention feels like progress because it produces an immediate emotional reward. Someone compliments you and you feel successful. Someone notices your work and you feel important. Someone responds enthusiastically and you feel validated. But attention does not necessarily mean growth. You can receive enormous attention without becoming wiser, stronger, or more capable. That is why you must learn to separate visibility from value. Being seen is not the same as being valuable. Being praised is not the same as being competent. Being popular is not the same as being respected. Being noticed is not the same as being memorable. True value comes from what remains when the attention disappears. What can you still do? What have you learned? What skills have you developed? What principles do you live by? How do you behave when nobody is watching? Those questions reveal character. And this is where your private work becomes important. Some of the most valuable improvements in your life will happen without an audience. You will practice when nobody applauds. You will study when nobody compliments you. You will make difficult choices without anyone knowing. You will continue after failing when there is no immediate reward. That is where real confidence develops. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen your trust in yourself. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you strengthen your ability to direct your attention. Every time you learn from a mistake instead of making excuses, you strengthen your character. Every time you refuse to compromise your values simply to gain approval, you strengthen your identity. These small decisions accumulate. Eventually, you become someone who does not need to constantly prove their worth because they have evidence within themselves. And when you stop chasing attention, you also become less vulnerable to rejection. Someone may not notice you. Someone may not appreciate your work. Someone may choose another person. Someone may disagree with your ideas. You can accept these experiences without allowing them to determine your identity. This is freedom. You cannot control who notices you. You cannot control who approves of you. You cannot control who remembers you. But you can control what you become. That is where your power belongs. There is also an important distinction between being valuable and believing that you are superior. Genuine value does not require arrogance. You do not need to look down on others to develop yourself. You do not need to prove that you are better than everyone else. Your competition is primarily with the version of yourself that refuses to grow, become more capable, become more thoughtful, become more disciplined, become more emotionally intelligent, become more useful, become more authentic. Then let people form their own opinions. Some will notice, some will not. It does not matter. Your responsibility is not to force the world to recognize your value. Your responsibility is to create something worth recognizing. Build so much substance into your character that attention becomes a consequence of your growth, not the purpose behind it. There is a difference between being present and demanding to be noticed. Many people enter a room with the unconscious desire to fill every silence, speak over others, prove their intelligence, or make sure everyone knows they have arrived. They believe visibility creates influence. But often the opposite is true. The person who constantly demands attention becomes familiar very quickly, while the person who knows how to use presence carefully can leave a stronger impression without saying nearly as much. Presence begins with awareness. When you enter a conversation, do not immediately ask yourself, how can I impress these people? Instead, observe what is happening around you, who is speaking, what are people responding to, what is being left unsaid, what emotions are present in the room. What does the situation actually require from you? This simple habit changes the quality of your presence because you are no longer performing, you are participating consciously. A powerful presence does not require constant talking. Sometimes it is the ability to listen without becoming distracted. Sometimes it is the ability to speak one thoughtful sentence instead of 10 unnecessary ones. Sometimes it is remaining calm when everyone else becomes emotional. People remember how you make them feel, but they also remember how you carried yourself when circumstances became difficult. And imagine two people facing criticism. One immediately becomes defensive. They interrupt, explain, justify, and try to prove that the criticism is unfair. The other pauses. They listen. They consider whether there is something useful in what was said. Then they respond calmly. The second person may say less, but their composure communicates something powerful. It says, I do not need to react to everything. That quality creates respect. Emotional composure is a major part of presence because your behavior becomes more noticeable when it is not controlled by every external stimulus. If praise makes you excessively excited and criticism instantly destroys your confidence, people can see that your emotional state is dependent on them. But when you remain relatively grounded through both praise and criticism, you become harder to shake. This does not mean becoming emotionless. It means learning to experience emotions without immediately surrendering your behavior to them. You can be excited without becoming reckless. You can be disappointed without becoming bitter. You can be angry without becoming destructive. You can be nervous without allowing fear to make every decision. You can receive praise without becoming dependent on it. That balance creates maturity. Another important part of presence is eye contact and attention during conversation. When someone speaks to you, actually listen. Do not simply wait for your opportunity to speak. Do not mentally prepare your next story while they are still talking. Give them your attention. Ask yourself what they are really trying to communicate. Sometimes people say one thing while their real concern is somewhere deeper. Someone may complain about a situation when what they actually want is to feel understood. Someone may criticize an idea because they are uncertain about its consequences. Someone may ask a simple question because they are trying to understand your values. Listening carefully allows you to respond to the real conversation rather than merely reacting to words, and this creates another form of influence. People feel seen around you. That is rare in a world where everyone is trying to speak. Someone who genuinely listens becomes memorable, but listening does not mean becoming passive. There are moments when you need to speak clearly. When you do, choose your words carefully. Do not speak simply because silence feels uncomfortable. Silence can create space for thought. A thoughtful pause before answering can prevent unnecessary words. It can also show that you are considering what has been said rather than reacting automatically. This is particularly useful during conflict. When someone tries to provoke you, your first instinct may be to respond immediately. But the strongest response is often the one that comes after you have regained control of yourself. Ask yourself, what outcome do I actually want? Do you want to win an argument? Do you want to solve a problem? Do you want to protect a boundary? Do you want to understand the other person's position? Different goals require different responses. Without clarity, You can spend enormous energy winning battles that never needed to happen. Presence also means knowing when to leave a conversation. Not every disagreement deserves hours of explanation. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your attention. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is calmly say, I don't think this conversation is productive, and step away. Again, this is not about creating artificial mystery. It is about respecting your own attention. Your presence becomes stronger when your attention has direction. If you are constantly available, constantly talking, constantly reacting, and constantly explaining, people have little reason to pay close attention to any particular moment. But when you speak with intention, listen carefully, and choose your involvement, your presence becomes more defined. This connects directly to the next principle: curiosity. A person with strong presence does not reveal everything at once. They allow conversations to develop naturally. They have interests, goals, experiences, and thoughts that unfold over time. But the foundation must always be authenticity. Do not pretend to know more than you do. Do not manufacture silence to appear intelligent. Do not act distant to make people chase you. Do not suppress kindness because you think warmth makes you weak. Real presence is not a collection of tricks. It is the result of self-command. You are comfortable enough with yourself that you do not need to dominate every conversation. You are confident enough to listen. You are disciplined enough to pause. You are secure enough to admit when you are wrong. You are thoughtful enough to choose your words, and you are independent enough to leave situations that repeatedly demand a version of you that you do not respect. When these qualities develop, people may not always know exactly why your presence feels different. They simply notice that you are not fighting for attention. You are fully present when you choose to be, and you are comfortable with silence when there's nothing meaningful to add. That is the beginning of becoming difficult to ignore. Not by becoming louder, but by becoming more deliberate. There is a powerful difference between being mysterious and simply being unknown. Being unknown happens when you have nothing meaningful to reveal. Mystery, however, comes from having depth that cannot be understood immediately. It comes from knowing that not every thought needs to be announced, not every achievement needs to be displayed, and not every part of your private life needs to become public information. When you understand this, you stop trying to create curiosity through games and begin creating it through substance. Most people reveal too much too quickly. They announce their plans before taking action. They explain every decision. They share every emotional reaction. They tell everyone what they are working toward, what they are afraid of, what they want, and what they intend to do next. They believe openness automatically creates connection, but sometimes excessive disclosure removes the opportunity for people to discover anything gradually. You do not need to become secretive. You need to become selective. There is a difference. Privacy is not deception. Privacy is understanding that access to your life should have levels. A stranger does not need the same information as a trusted friend. Someone you have just met does not need to know your deepest struggles. A person who has not earned your trust does not automatically deserve access to your plans, relationships, or vulnerabilities. This does not mean becoming suspicious of everyone. It means allowing trust to develop through experience. Watch how people behave. Do they respect what you tell them? Do they keep private information private? Do they listen without immediately judging? Do they respect your boundaries? Do their actions match their words? These patterns tell you whether someone has earned greater access to your life. And there is something else you should understand. You do not need to explain yourself constantly. If you make a thoughtful decision, you do not need to convince everyone that it was correct. If someone disagrees with your direction, you can listen without becoming defensive. If your priorities have changed, you can explain them when explanation is necessary. But you do not need to write an entire defense of your life. Sometimes a simple statement is enough. I've decided to do this. I'd rather keep that private. I'm still figuring it out. I'll talk about it when I'm ready. These sentences create boundaries without creating unnecessary drama. There is also power in allowing your actions to arrive before your announcements. If you have a goal, work toward it before constantly talking about it. If you are learning a skill, practice it before demanding recognition. If you want to change your life, begin changing your habits instead of repeatedly explaining what you intend to become. Results create a different kind of credibility. When you announce everything, people judge the promise. When you quietly develop something, they eventually encounter the result. This is not about hiding success. It is about allowing progress to become real before making it a performance. You should also understand that curiosity becomes stronger when there is genuine depth behind it. You cannot manufacture mystery forever with silence. Eventually, people discover whether there is substance underneath the surface. That is why you should develop yourself. Read, learn, travel when possible, explore ideas, develop skills, carucate things, ask difficult questions, study people without assuming you understand them completely, become interested in subjects beyond yourself. The more you develop your inner world, the more naturally interesting you become. You will have stories because you have experiences. You will have opinions because you have thought deeply. You will have questions because you understand that the world is complicated. You will have knowledge because you have remained curious. You will have perspective because you have reflected on what you have experienced. That is real mystery. It is not, I refuse to tell you anything. It is, there is more to discover because I am still discovering myself. Emotional depth matters too. You do not need to reveal every feeling at the exact moment you experience it. Sometimes emotions require reflection before communication. Suppose someone disappoints you. Your first reaction might be anger. You may want to send a message immediately and explain everything you feel. Pause. Ask yourself what actually happened. Separate the facts from your interpretation. Maybe the person made a genuine mistake. Maybe your expectations were unrealistic. Maybe there is a misunderstanding. Maybe there is a real pattern that needs to be addressed. You will communicate much more effectively when you understand your own emotions before placing them into words. This connects directly to emotional control. A person who reacts instantly reveals exactly what affects them. A person who can pause gives themselves the opportunity to choose a thoughtful response. But do not confuse emotional control with emotional suppression. If something genuinely matters, communicate it. Mystery should never become an excuse for dishonesty, avoidance, or emotional manipulation. Do not deliberately disappear to make someone anxious. Do not withhold affection simply to make someone chase you. Do not create confusion to gain power. Those are games, not strength. Real mystery is much simpler. You are warm, but you have boundaries. You are honest, but you have privacy. You are open, but you are not careless. You communicate, but you do not overshare. You allow people to know you, but you allow that knowledge to develop naturally. And perhaps the strongest source of mystery is having a life that does not revolve around being observed. You have goals nobody needs to applaud. You have interests that exist for your own enjoyment. You have private standards. You have personal routines. You have thoughts that you are still exploring. You have a direction that continues even when nobody is paying attention. When you build that kind of life, you do not need to perform mystery. You simply become someone who cannot be completely understood in a single glance because there is genuine depth behind the surface. Let people discover you through time, consistency, and experience rather than giving them everything at once. The most difficult person to control is not the loudest person in the room, nor the person who constantly tries to prove how strong they are. It is the person who has learned to govern their own emotional reactions. When you become capable of feeling anger without immediately acting from it, experiencing rejection without losing your sense of worth, receiving praise without becoming dependent on it, and facing uncertainty without desperately seeking reassurance, you develop a form of inner stability that cannot easily be taken from you. Most people underestimate how much of their behavior is controlled by emotion. Someone says something disrespectful and they immediately respond. Someone stops giving them attention and they begin chasing. Someone criticizes them and they spend hours defending themselves. Someone praises them and suddenly they become overly confident. Their emotional state rises and falls according to what happens around them. That creates predictability. And when your reactions are predictable, your behavior becomes easier for others to influence. The goal is not to become emotionless. Emotions contain information. Anger may tell you that something matters. Fear may tell you that you need to examine a situation. Disappointment may reveal that an expectation was important to you. Happiness can remind you what brings meaning into your life, but an emotion is not always an instruction. You can feel something without immediately acting on it. That distinction can transform your life. Imagine someone makes a comment that irritates you. Your first impulse may be to respond immediately. You want to defend yourself, correct them, or make sure they understand that they crossed a line. Pause, take a breath. Ask yourself what exactly happened, not what you think happened, not what you fear happened, what actually happened. This simple question separates facts from assumptions. Perhaps the person genuinely intended disrespect. Perhaps they were careless. Perhaps you misunderstood their meaning. Perhaps the comment says more about their own frustration than it does about you. You cannot know until you create enough distance to observe. That pause is powerful because it gives your judgment time to catch up with your emotion. The same principle applies to attention. If someone does not respond to you, your mind may immediately create a story. Maybe they are losing interest. Maybe they are ignoring you. Maybe you did something wrong, but uncertainty is not evidence. Instead of immediately chasing reassurance, continue with your own priorities. Give the situation time to reveal itself. If clarification becomes necessary, communicate directly rather than allowing imagination to control you. This is where independence and emotional control become connected. When your life has direction, another person's behavior does not have unlimited power over your mind. You have responsibilities, interests, goals, friendships, learning, and personal development to return to. You can care about someone without constantly monitoring them. You can value their attention without depending on it. You can experience disappointment without allowing it to consume your entire day. That is emotional freedom. It also means learning how to handle criticism. Not every criticism deserves your defense, but not every criticism should be dismissed either. When someone criticizes you, ask yourself, is there something useful here? If there is, learn from it. If there isn't, let it pass. You do not need to prove that every critic is wrong. Sometimes the strongest response to criticism is improvement. Other times, the strongest response is simply moving forward. The important thing is that you choose rather than react. Praise requires the same discipline. Compliments can feel good, but they can also become addictive when they become the foundation of your identity. If you become dependent on praise, you begin changing your behavior to receive more of it. You become afraid of making choices that might disappoint people. You stop trusting your own judgment. Instead, learn to appreciate praise without needing it. Say thank you. Enjoy the moment, then return to your standards. Your value should not disappear because someone stopped complimenting you. Your progress should not become meaningless because nobody noticed it. Your goals should not change simply because someone else does not understand them. This is why private development matters so much. Some of your strongest habits will be built when nobody is watching. You will practice emotional control in moments when you could easily react. You will choose patience when impatience would be easier. You will keep your word to yourself when nobody could punish you for breaking it. Those moments build self-trust, and self-trust creates confidence. You begin realizing, I can handle uncomfortable emotions without allowing them to control my decisions. That is a powerful realization. It also changes the way you handle conflict. Instead of entering every disagreement with the goal of winning, you begin asking what outcome actually matters. Do you need to protect a boundary? Do you need clarification? Do you need to apologize? Do you need to walk away? Do you need to accept that you simply disagree? These questions create strategy without manipulation. You are no longer fighting simply because your ego feels challenged. You become more selective with your battles. And when someone attempts to provoke you, they discover that your attention is not easily captured. You do not need to respond instantly. You do not need to explain yourself repeatedly. You do not need to prove that you are powerful. Your calmness becomes the response. But remember, emotional control does not mean tolerating disrespect. If someone repeatedly crosses a boundary, you can respond firmly. Calmness and strength can exist together. You can say no without shouting. You can leave without creating a scene. You can disagree without insulting. You can protect yourself without becoming cruel. That is the difference between emotional control and emotional suppression. Suppression hides emotion. Control understands emotion and chooses what to do with it. As you develop this ability, your presence changes. You become less reactive, more deliberate, and more difficult to pull into unnecessary drama. People may not understand exactly what has changed, but they notice that you are not easily shaken. You have learned something important. You cannot control every situation, but you can control the person you become inside every situation. Craster your reactions, and you stop giving every person, comment, or circumstance the power to control your behavior. Attention can make you visible, but respect determines whether your presence has lasting weight. Many people spend enormous energy trying to become noticed while ignoring the more important question, what happens after people notice you? If your behavior has no standards, if you accept anything simply because you fear losing someone's approval, then attention alone will never give you real influence. You may be seen, but you will not necessarily be respected. This is why standards are so important. A standard is not a demand that everyone behave exactly the way you want. It is a principle that guides your own decisions. It tells you what you are willing to participate in, what you value, and where you draw the line. Without standards, your behavior becomes dependent on circumstances and other people's reactions. You say yes when you want to say no. You tolerate things that make you uncomfortable. You keep explaining yourself because you are afraid someone will misunderstand you. Eventually, you become disconnected from your own judgment. Self-respect begins when you stop abandoning yourself for approval. Think about how often people tolerate behavior they know they should not accept because they fear losing someone's attention. Someone repeatedly ignores their boundaries, but they continue making excuses. Someone speaks to them disrespectfully, but they remain because they are afraid of being alone. Someone constantly demands their time without giving anything meaningful in return, but they keep making themselves available. Why? Because the fear of losing the relationship becomes greater than the desire to protect their own dignity. But there is a hidden cost. Every time you repeatedly accept something that violates your values, you teach yourself that your own standards are negotiable, and eventually you stop trusting yourself. You begin wondering whether your feelings are legitimate. You question whether you are asking for too much. You become afraid to communicate your needs because you do not want to appear difficult. This is how self-respect gradually disappears, not in one dramatic moment, but through hundreds of small compromises. The solution is not to become harsh, it is to become clear. Know what matters to you, now what kind of treatment you consider respectful, now what behaviors you are willing to discuss, and what behaviors you will simply step away from. Then communicate those boundaries calmly. A boundary is not a threat. It is a decision about your own behavior. You cannot force someone to respect you, but you can decide what you will do when they repeatedly refuse to. You cannot force someone to communicate honestly, but you can decide how much trust you place in their words. You cannot force someone to value your time, but you can decide how much access they receive to it. This is where real personal power develops. You stop trying to control other people and start controlling your own participation. That distinction is crucial. Manipulation says, I will make you behave the way I want. Self-respect says, I will decide what I participate in. The second is far more stable. It also requires patience. Not every mistake means someone should immediately be removed from your life. People make mistakes. People have difficult days. People misunderstand each other. The important question is what happens after the mistake? Do they acknowledge it? Do they take responsibility? Do they try to repair it? Do they change their behavior? One incident may be an error. A repeated pattern is information. This is why you should observe more than you react. Instead of deciding someone's entire character from one conversation, watch consistency. Instead of believing every promise, watch whether actions support the words. Instead of becoming impressed by temporary attention, observe how someone behaves when they have nothing to gain. Time reveals patterns that excitement can hide, and the same principle applies to your own behavior. If you want to be respected, become respectful. If you expect honesty, practice honesty. If you want people to respect your boundaries, respect theirs. If you want emotionally mature relationships, develop emotional maturity yourself. Standards lose their meaning when they only apply to everyone else. Real standards begin internally. You should also understand that having boundaries may sometimes disappoint people. Someone may tell you that you have changed. Perhaps you have. Maybe you stopped saying yes to everything. Maybe you stopped explaining every decision. Maybe you stopped tolerating disrespect. Maybe you started protecting your time. Chomp is not automatically a problem simply because someone else dislikes it. At the same time, do not use boundaries as an excuse to become selfish or careless. A strong boundary does not require cruelty. You can say no respectfully. You can disagree without insulting. You can leave without humiliating someone. You can protect your peace without trying to destroy theirs. This balance matters. You are not trying to become untouchable. You are trying to become grounded. There is also a powerful relationship between standards and mystery. When you have standards, you naturally become more selective about what you reveal, where you spend your time, and who receives your attention. You no longer need to explain everything because your choices already communicate your priorities. People begin understanding that your attention has value, not because you pretend to be unavailable, because you genuinely have priorities. You are working towards something. You are developing yourself. You are protecting your time. You are choosing your relationships carefully. This creates a presence that cannot be easily manufactured. And perhaps the greatest benefit is that you become less desperate for recognition. When you respect yourself, you do not need every person to approve of you. Someone can disagree with you and you can listen without collapsing. Someone can leave and you can accept the pain without abandoning your identity. Someone can ignore you and you can continue with your life. Someone can criticize you and you can examine the criticism without allowing it to define you. That is freedom. The goal is not to become someone who everyone fears losing. The goal is to become someone who does not have to lose themselves in order to keep anyone. Build standards that protect your dignity and let your actions quietly show the world what you will and will not accept. The final transformation is not about becoming someone who desperately tries to be noticed. It is about becoming someone who no longer needs to be noticed in order to feel valuable. When your identity depends on attention, you become vulnerable to every change in the way people respond to you. Praise can make you feel powerful, criticism can make you question yourself, and rejection can make you feel as though something fundamental has been taken away. But when your identity is built on your own values, abilities, discipline, and direction, other people's reactions become information rather than commands. This is where true independence begins. You stop asking, do they like me? You begin asking, do I respect the person I am becoming? That question is much harder, but it is far more important. A strong identity is not created by choosing a personality and pretending to be it. It is created through repeated decisions. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you shape yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you build self-trust. Every time you admit a mistake instead of protecting your ego, you become more honest. Every time you walk away from something that violates your values, you strengthen your standards. Your identity is built through what you repeatedly do, not what you say you are, not what you want people to believe, not what you post, your actions. This is why personal growth must become more important than external recognition. If you spend your life trying to impress people, you will constantly adjust yourself according to the audience. You will say what gets approval. You will pursue what gets attention. You will avoid anything that might cause criticism. Eventually, you may become popular while becoming disconnected from yourself. That is a dangerous trait. You should be able to grow even when nobody is watching, right? When nobody asks you to learn a skill without needing applause, work toward a goal without announcing every step, improve your communication because you want to become better at understanding people, develop emotional control because you want peace, not because you want others to think you are powerful, build confidence because you want to trust yourself, not because you want everyone else to admire you. This is the difference between internal growth and performance. Performance asks, how does this look? Growth asks, what is this making me? The second question creates a much stronger person. And once you become focused on growth, you stop being threatened by other people's success. You no longer need to be the most impressive person in the room. Someone else can be smarter than you in one area. Someone else can have more experience. Someone else can receive more attention. You can appreciate them without feeling diminished because your identity is not built on comparison. You are focused on development. There will always be someone ahead of you in something. If your confidence depends on being superior, you will spend your life defending an unstable position. But if your confidence comes from knowing that you are learning and improving, you can admire others without losing yourself. This also makes you more interesting. A person with a strong inner world has something to bring into conversations. They have ideas, experiences, questions, skills, interests, lessons. They do not need to manufacture mystery because their life already contains depth. They do not need to dominate conversations because they have something meaningful to contribute when the right moment arrives. They do not need to chase attention because they have somewhere else to direct their energy. That is why the previous principles come together here. Value gives you substance. Presence gives you composure. Privacy creates space for discovery. Emotional control protects your judgment. Standards protect your self-respect. But identity gives all of these qualities a foundation. Without identity, they become techniques. With identity, they become natural behavior. You are not quiet because you are trying to appear mysterious. You are quiet because you have learned that not every thought needs to be spoken. You are not selective with your attention because you want people to chase you. You are selective because your time matters. You are not emotionally controlled because you want to appear powerful. You are controlled because you refuse to let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. You are not private because you want to create suspicion. You are private because you understand that some parts of your life belong only to you and the people you trust. You are not setting standards because you want to control others. You are setting standards because you have learned to respect yourself. That is authenticity. And authenticity is difficult to ignore because it does not require constant performance. People can disagree with you. They can misunderstand you. They can criticize your choices. They can decide that they do not like you. You can still remain yourself. That is one of the strongest forms of freedom a person can develop. You cannot control whether people notice you. You cannot control whether they remember you. You cannot control whether everyone respects you. But you can control whether your life has substance. You can control what you learn. You can control what you practice. You can control what you tolerate. You can control how you respond. You can control what kind of person you become. And when you focus on those things, something unexpected happens. You stop measuring every interaction by how much attention you received. You stop checking whether everyone approves. You stop trying to prove that you are important. You become comfortable being yourself even when the room is not applauding. That confidence is quiet, but it is powerful. The person who no longer needs to be seen becomes much harder to overlook because their presence is no longer built around a demand for attention. It is built around character, purpose, discipline, and depth. So do not spend your life trying to become impossible to ignore, become impossible to replace within your own life by becoming someone you can genuinely trust, respect, and continue building.